I guess the biggest point is, do you make sure it's a camel specific thing, and most people that you're going to buy these supplements from don't know. They don't really know if it's what you need, so you kind of have to take on the responsibility of working out what you need.
Yes,
because you can't ask the guy if it's exactly what you need for, like, is this all right for camels? Like, you can't expect him to know the answer.
We're talking about camel supplements today. I've got the recording going, so and I know we spoke briefly over email about what some things we can cover to try broaden it as much as we can, but give some valuable information.
Yeah. Mine were just some a couple of additives that you just need to make sure that they have in their diet, which I think is in that mineral supplement that you guys have. Just the basics. And I just think it's really important that if you're going to be asking people, just realize that they may or may not know the answer, and they might just go yes, but it may not be correct. So always triple check before you're starting to feed them something. Get onto one of your forums, ring a friend, just double check before you really commit to buying like 20 kilos of supplement. Because there's nothing worse than that going out to the shed and looking at your mistake for the next 2 months.
I couldn't agree with you more, Margie. When I first got my very first camel, was out in the desert, and the people who brought this little baby camel in were feeding it sunshine milk.
Yep.
Right. Yep. But I'd heard from somewhere, God knows where, because I was brand new to the whole show. This is like a millennium ago.
Yes.
That sunshine was no good because they were lactose intolerant, and so I did asked around a little bit and found out. So I got bags of Vet here, and was giving this little baby camel Vet milk, powdered milk. And anyway, it did live, so on that. But I still didn't know. But it was the best that I could do for the small amount of information that I could find.
That's it.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics, Margie. Like, let's start at the start, which is the basics.
I can do that. I think one of the big things that you've got to remember is for ruminants, they really have a high vitamin B requirement.
Yes.
Not just for their, and that's it. And the B vitamins are a group of vitamins. There's B1, there's B12, there's a whole lot in there. And I'm absolutely fine with just a general B complex vitamin, just making sure that they're in there. For calves, they absolutely need a thiamine an amount. You've really got to make sure that whatever you're feeding them has a really high thiamine content. Now, camel's milk, obviously, is the best. So they have a high thiamine component. The calves, maybe we should start with the calves in terms of what you were saying with the milk supplements as well, because it's really hard. Like, if you've got a baby calf, you need to feed it something, but you don't want to give it the wrong thing. So, Russell, you were saying you had Denkavite.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but you're right. They do have they need a bit of a lower lactose situation. And remember, if you give them high lactose, it's the sugar in milk. So lactose is the sugar. And that will cause like a frothy diarrhea, that sort of thing. But the feed is a different thing, but they need thiamine, and that is to help with their brain development.
Okay.
And so a lot of times you'll find a lot of these little calves, if they've got dummy calf syndrome, they have a thing called a Polio Encephalopathy, and that's actually a vitamin B1 deficiency. So that's all that is. And it's exciting as a vet to diagnose these deficiencies because you can fix them, but it's also tragic because oh my God, it's dying just because I didn't give it the right food or the right supplement.
Yeah.
So if ever you've got sick calves, you can't really overdo vitamin B. If it's a B complex injection, or if you're being able to make sure you've got a high vitamin B content in your food.
Okay, so you can't overdo it.
Well, not really.
Not grossly, obviously, but
not grossly. You can with some elements, but with a vitamin, you will pretty much just weed it out, even a camel. Right. So things like, you know, vitamin C. I mean, all of these things are important. And people have to remember that with supplements, you've just got to be really careful with your dosage. Like there are, because some people say, you know, well, the antioxidants in, what is it? Berries to get the level of antioxidant that you need for it to be antioxidant in your body. And so the trouble is with a lot of these supplements, things like people are saying, I'm not anti-turmeric at all. I'm all positive. Hell, I'm into seaweed and vitamins and all that jazz. But stuff like turmeric, you've got to feed them so freaking much turmeric that they are not going to eat it to get the dose. So even just be aware of products that, you know, have a little bit of turmeric in it, because all they're doing is sort of catching you with the name, and then and it's making you feel good. You're like, oh, turmeric, it's a natural anti-inflammatory. It is if they eat a shitload of it. And I mean, a shitload is not really a scientific amount, but you have to eat more than they're capable of consuming. And with a lot of those things, I remember that silly thing that went around the internet a few years ago, the cinnamon test, where you eat as much cinnamon as you can, and it becomes a point where you just can't eat enough cinnamon. Like you can't swallow any more cinnamon. The same thing happens with a lot of natural additives. They can't physically eat enough to get the amount that they need. But vitamin B is super important in ruminants and pseudo-ruminants. So every diet has to have that. And, yeah, the thiamine for the little ones probably most importantly. I think the biggest additive if you've got your pregnant females is, and I know Tara and I have talked about this before, is selenium. And that would be one of the biggest things you've really got to work on. Now, there's good seleniums and there's very bad seleniums. So camels are particularly sensitive to selenium toxicity, and you can overdo selenium. There's really only one product that anyone needs to know about, and that's Selenium.
Wait a sec.
Selenium.
Selenium. Selovin. That's really the only one that I am safely happy. It's an injection. It's hard to get. If you can get oral selenium, that's the best.
S-E-L?
S-E-L.
S-E-L.
Yep. O-V-I-N.
O-V-I-N. What about the amount of selenium inside product anatone? Is that enough for a supplement as well as all the other bits and pieces?
They need a little bit more, and certainly your pregnant females will need an extra supplement of selenium.
Okay.
It's kind of like, I equate it to when you're trying to get pregnant, you have all the folic acid stuff. It's kind of a little bit of it. So when these pregnant camels are gestating, they need a little bit more selenium, because the other thing is most of the soils in Australia are selenium deficient. And remember, these animals only get it's like us, you only get your vitamins and minerals from what you eat. Or, you know, a multivitamin. You mentioned anatone. I think everything, you know, every camel in an environment that's not its natural environment should be on anatone. I think it's such a good product. It's got vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, amino acids, so they're the building blocks for protein. it's also a fermented product. So as
Yeah.
with anything, that just takes out a little bit of a step that the bacteria have to do. And so it kind of helps the other bacteria in their body.
It takes away that extra effort, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if you are, as we all find with our camels in a domestic situation, with their diet, it's almost impossible to mimic what they would have in the wild. So we've really got to think like that and give them the extra support. I honestly think that there's not a camel that is now housed in a domestic situation I think they should all be on Anatone.
Yeah.
And I'm not sponsored by anybody, so I think Anatone is a really good product.
I think Anatone should sponsor us.
I think they should.
It should sponsor every camel owner in Australia.
Oh no! Well, I've always thought about reaching out to them, going, "We endorse your product so much. We should be affiliates for you." You know.
And the other thing is the Anatone company has it's specific for camels and alpacas. So it's not like a lot of the other drug companies that just don't want anything to do with camels.
Yes.
They're just like, because there's no money in the research for it. Anatone have actually put it out there and said this is good for camels.
Yes.
And that's, I think, maybe we should. There is another one, if anyone's in the dairy game, and there's a product called Levucel, Levucel.
Okay.
Just bear with me. I've got a handout on it here. It's a whole lot of, it's basically rumen support. So it's a whole lot of fermented products with amino acids in it as well. But it's specifically designed for your dairy camels that have got a much higher energy load that they've got to provide. So
specifically designed.
Wow.
It's designed for dairy cows, as in like bovine.
Oh yeah.
But all the guys, a lot of the dairies in the Middle East are using it as a really good product to increase milk yield. Now, I have not seen any studies on it in camels at all. They've never done it. It does increase milk yield a little bit in your dairy cows. I've read all the science to it. It makes sense. So I would go at every time. They're a walking compost, they're a walking compost heap. That's what their rumen is. Their whole rumen, you've got to look after that first stomach.
We froze. So if we could go back to where you're at, specifically designed for bovine milk yield.
Yeah, Levucel. So it will help increase your milk yield basically by maintaining the right pH and the right environment in the rumen.
Okay.
When I came back from the Middle East and a conference over there, I wanted everyone to do it. I guess that it's going to be expensive, but if you're getting an increase in milk yield, it kind of will even itself out. And the trick is with camels, with the milk, their lactation periods are a lot longer than a cow. So a lot of the dairies will have camels that are lactating for 14 months, and that's unheard of for these animals when they're doing their lactating. So another thing.
Can I just ask before we get on to the next point, is the first point you mentioned was vitamin B requirements. What are we looking at as camel owners? What are we looking at getting out of feed or supplements? Like what are we looking at surrounding that? So or do you think Anatone has enough vitamin B? Or I
think Anatone is going to have enough vitamin B. I really do, because it's designed and set up for a ruminant animal. Now, we know camels aren't true ruminants, but the vitamin B component in it is perfect for camels. Okay. And I think you've got to start trying to look for products that are easy and easy, so you don't have to think too much. So you can put anatone in, know it's not going to do any harm, and that the vitamin B component is enough. And I do believe it is enough.
Yeah.
I can get you a
So with the anatone, going back to that, just simply putting some water with it and spraying it on their hay.
Perfect.
We don't put water with ours.
Well, no, but I mean, I'm just,
mix it in feed.
Mix it in feed, that sort of thing. Yeah, yeah. And of course, well, we don't do grains. But
is there any particular feeds where they can get this high vitamin B yield?
Look, a fresh feed, so the fresh, I mean, they call it fresh alfalfa or fresh lucerne, is going to have a higher vitamin B content. Yeah. So that's good. Again, with anything, as you all know, you've got to introduce anything new slowly. Camels are really good at just spitting it out the back end if they're not into it. And then you're looking at your $42 a bale lucerne just come out the other end.
I know.
So it's a tough one.
There's $1, $2.
Yeah, $1, $2, like driving a boat. Every minute is another $100 of fuel. It's the vitamin B. You've got the B1, the B2 is one called riboflavin, B3 is niacin. That's Nutrigrain. This is all just marketing. And then
that sounded familiar.
Yeah, I know. Niacin and iron. Vitamin B7 is biotin. Now, that's really important for your hooved animals. It's also important for camels as well, because whilst they don't have hooves, that fat pad has a really big sort of thick cornified layer on it. If you look at your camel's feet, they look like, old cracked heels.
Yep.
Biotin is really important for that. But again,
biotin.
Biotin, which is vitamin B7.
B7.
It's also really good for the metabolism of fats and amino acids, which is really where the camel's whole metabolism kicks in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in grazing animals as well, if you feed grains, you're not going to be getting enough absorption of vitamin B7 in particular, but pretty much everything, because these vitamins are absorbed through the small intestine. So if you've got any food that's going straight through the small intestine and making that digestive process faster than it has to be, they're not going to absorb it.
Yes.
Another reason not to feed grain.
Another reason not to feed grain. It's a really, they love it, of course. If they're used to it, they love it.
I like peanuts.
My kids like chocolate.
Correct. The grain thing, if you want a product, I've been using up here, I've been getting some pellets made, but you can get them made by any feed company. You'll have to pay for a special run.
Yeah.
I can actually send you, Tara, the breakdown of what's in the pellets that I recommend for dairy farmers.
I would love that. We would love that. We can share that.
I get them specially made, I guess. So I don't know how much, when I say I tell someone to do it, I have no idea how much they cost. Which is the downside of the vet thing. I can just say, blah, blah, blah.
Do this, do that.
Happens. But I would never,
Hey, just quickly, how would you like access to the full tutorial on this camel topic? Become a member of our Camel Academy now, and you not only get access to this camel information, but a whole library of camel information. The Camel Academy is an online portal for camel owners and camel lovers just like you, which consists of a library of camel information, including entertaining camel vet talks and procedures, camel handling techniques and camel psychology talks, access to the latest and greatest info on camel husbandry and well-being, even workshops on how to make your own camel equipment, and of course a forum to ask your camel questions to camel professionals. This is just a glimpse on what you'll get access to in the Camel Academy. It's the camel flicks for the camel lover. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. Come join us, our resident camel vet, and a community of camel connectors worldwide over at cameleeracademy.com. That's CAMELEER academy.com.